thank you for inviting me to present my research, and thank you for coming to listen. And I'm really happy that there are people here who are interested in green shipping. So I am a PhD candidate at the Department of Administration and Organization Theory. I'm also affiliated with the Center for Climate and Energy Transformation. And I am a social scientist, and I look at the social and political process of trying to govern this green shipping transformation. And I saw this webinar as a chance to kind of start pulling the strings together in my PhD. I have 11 months left, and we are supposed to write 3 articles. So I will give you kind of an overview of my PhD project and what I have found out so far. And we only had 20 minutes, so I have to be a bit brief, but you're probably happy about that. Okay, let's see if I can go to there. Okay, so when I started studying kind of how is the green shipping transformation governed, I saw that particularly in Norway, you have the maritime industry has come together in network formations. And I'm going to tell you what I mean by networks. And we're seeing this trend of clustering that is produced by a belief that gathering in clusters and networks will produce a good outcome. And I'll also say more about that. So just some of these networks have been around for many years, but I think that during the last couple of years, we are seeing these kind of cooperative networks popping up everywhere, both in Norway and internationally. So you see here some examples of these kinds of networks. And they can be known as programs or initiatives, public-private partnerships, clusters, and so on. But I call them networks. That's a general category. So when I say networks, I talk about cooperative constellations of various actors. So you have in these networks, the members, they voluntarily become members, and they join together kind of to make an effort to find new solutions for green shipping. And these may be, both private and public. As I said, it might be shipping owners, technology companies, energy companies, banks, and also maritime administrations, public ministries, or municipalities, for example. And they have different backgrounds, but they share a common goal. So they try to cooperate. And what so in research, research that looks at these kinds of networks are trying to see what is the outcome. Why do we have these networks? So it's, although we see it as we have high hopes in these networks to produce outcomes, but do they actually? And if you have thoughts about this, please let me know during the discussion after. But some potential outcomes of these kind of green networks is, of course, new innovations, developing new technology. There's a branch of research that looks at regional economical development. So the researchers at the Moon Center at HVL, and I can never remember the name of that Western College of Applied Sciences or something. I'm sorry about that. They are very good at looking at these kinds of outcomes. So because I'm a political scientist, I look at how these networks co-produce, how they together produce or trying to influence policy, and how they actually lobby the government so that the government will apply or adopt the policies that the network see as beneficial for enforcing a transformation. And also one potential outcome might be that the industry more self-regulated, so they regulate themselves instead of having regulations forced upon them just from the government, from like top-down regulation. So this is now you see kind of an overview of my PhD focus. I study these green shipping networks from different angles. So in my first article, I have looked at, and I will tell you now about these 3 different articles and the findings from the 2 first. But I look at how networks work to influence policy in the first paper, and then in the second paper, I look at how the networks influence the individual members, which and I look at shipping companies and if they help them to make different choices. And in the third article, I look at how the context influences how the networks work. And I'll take you through. But first, now I want to tell you about the theoretical foundations of my PhD project. This is a lot of text. I can see that now. The literature on interorganizational networks says that networks are useful for the sharing of information, and that they are particularly useful in technology-dependent industry, because there is a large need for information and knowledge, and to distribute this knowledge. And another hypothesis is that networks speed up the diffusion of new practice. So they kind of gather different kinds of actors with different knowledges, and in theory, they will share their knowledge, and this will help speed up a transformation, getting new innovations, and finding new solutions. And I kind of overall, I call these governance networks, because they are trying to govern what happens, or they're trying to govern this. They're not sitting and waiting for government to make the transition happen. They are trying to take part in the governance to steer it in the right direction and also speed it up. So now governance networks, the literature on governance networks focus on how governance is exercised in the interaction between these different kinds of members. So it's not just the government that makes that kind of governs the course of events and decides what is going to happen, but they cooperate and do it together and find the way together. So for the first article, I do qualitative research, and I have looked at look at these networks as cases, and I studied how the NCE Maritime Cleantech, which is a cluster organization located in Stord, and how the Green Shipping Program, which is the public-private partnership, it's led by DNV from Oslo, and I looked at how these two work to. Well, first I asked, are they able to do they do other things than find new innovation, finding new technology? And I soon realized that yes, they are actually trying to lobby the government and influence policy. So then I asked, what enables them to do that? So in this study, I did a deep case study of the two and looked at who are their members, what do they do, and what do the members bring into the networks, and how do they organize when they are trying to lobby and to influence, kind of get government to do as they want. And the situation in Norway now is very much like the industry is very, they are in front, they are pushing the government, and that in itself is a very interesting situation to be in. They're asking the government for new policies and new regulations. And so I find that they have cases that they work on. For example, NCE Maritime Cleantech worked very hard on getting the So from 2026, ships sailing into our World Heritage fjords in Norway have to sail emission-free. And Maritime Cleantech was working hard towards getting the Storting to decide that. And the Green Shipping Program has, for example, been working on establishing a CO2 fund. And I find that they're able to deliver their messages to the central decision makers. And the reason why is that they draw on the different resources and knowledges that the members have, which is particularly technological expertise, lobbying expertise, and important relations to decision makers and policy makers. So within these networks, these resources find each other and are put together, and they're able to the networks itself is able to build legitimacy and the power they need to actually access the important decision makers and get their message heard. So that was the first. My second article, then I remember I asked where I wanted to see how being a member in a network impacts the decarbonization strategy for that individual member. So this is also a qualitative case study. And this is a different focus because that's kind of, I look at the relation between the network and the individual member. So my cases are offshore shipping companies that are members of one or several of these three networks you can see here. And I asked, do they start doing things differently when they become a member? Does it help their effort to reduce emissions? Okay, this next slide shows the cases. Don't spend too much time looking at it, but so I look at three different offshore shipping companies, and they are members of either the Maritime Battery Forum and Sea Maritime Cleantech, or the Green Shipping Program. So what I have done is that I've done interviews, I've read company reports and internal documents and their web pages and media articles to track their decarbonization strategy over the last 10 years to see whether after they join a shipping company, after they join a green shipping network, do they do differently? And what I find is a bit ambiguous, because in one way I see that becoming a member of a network is not a main driver for how the shipping companies work with decarbonization. But that doesn't mean that they're not important. So you can't really see a shift in strategy after becoming a member. But in the interviews, I interviewed the environmental engineers of the companies, and they tell me that the green shipping network, so they go to conferences, workshops, they look at webinars and talk to people, and they say that it's a really, really valuable source of information. So they even tell me that they don't dare to stay outside of these networks, because then they don't get access to the important information early enough. They might fall behind. So they are there to get information and monitor new trends, and also monitor their competitors, what they do. So they say it's important to be members. And one of my informants told me that one thing that is really important is that when you go to these kind of network events, you become inspired, and you get inspired to go back to your work and do better. And I haven't measured that exactly, but I think that's very interesting and an important effect. But the information they get is very general, so they can't necessarily take that information and apply it to their organization and do things differently. So in one way, it doesn't seem like being a member has a large impact, but in another way, the informants told me another important thing, and that is if they, at least one of the networks now offers one-on-one guidance, where they offer to sit down with a member and look at what are the particular challenges and what can be the possible solutions. What kind of zero emission technologies can be applicable to that company, that shipping company, to decarbonize, and how do they raise funds? And then they actually help them to write the applications for funding. And these are skills and information that the shipping companies do not have in-house, and they tell me that they are this is very important for them when they are going to adopt zero emission technology. So my research cannot say that this is happened, because it hasn't happened yet, but it shows that there's these green shipping networks might, if they have the capacity and resources to actually help the individual member, that might be decisive for that individual member. So yeah, we'll skip to the next two. And my third article, I have just started this, so I don't have any findings to tell you yet, but I'm interested whether you have thoughts about this, and ideas and hypotheses about how it works. So my plan is to, I want to study whether context, and by that I mean the political framework and the public administration, does that influence how the networks operate, how, like, their conditions for development, for developing and also working to find new solutions. And I want to do a comparative case study of the green shipping program in Norway and the Washington Maritime Blue, which is located in Washington State in the US. So both of these networks have, and this is not the common thing, but they want to implement public policy. And they have quite similar ways of working, but it's Norway and the US, and the context is very different. Well, I will look at the political framework, but also like the industries and kind of levels of trust and how we do things is differently. And I have just started data collection for this third kind of sub-project of my PhD, and I think it will be very interesting. Okay, so just my last slide, I want to say something. What's my contribution of what will the contribution of my PhD be? And I hope, first I show that you have a lot of research on clusters and how these network cooperation comes up with new innovations and helps to develop regions. But I show that they also do different things. They're also very important for example, influencing policies. They may be important for the individual members, and there has been less research on these topics. And I hope to contribute with showing how industry helps co-regulate, and in the particular situation we have now, where the industry is kind of pushing the government to come up with new regulation. I can show that what are the conditions for that, for example. And also, lastly, one contribution that has not been a lot. There has not been a lot of research on how showing like comparative cases of how the context impacts the functioning of these kinds of networks. So that was it. That was a very brief run through of my project and my findings, and I hope you found it interesting, and I hope you have some comments for me and questions.